we're talking all about how do you stay focused? How do you stay focused on your goal until you actually achieve it? Last week, we talked a lot about really getting connected to something that's bigger than yourself, a higher purpose. Because here's the truth. If you're doing things in life, like if you're just pursuing, let's say, money for the sake of money, like you're going to hit a wall, right? You're going to be operating on scarcity. If you're wanting to lose weight just because, you think that you should, but you have no bigger purpose, no bigger reason why, it's the same thing. Same thing about anything in your life. You've got to understand why you are doing something. What is the bigger purpose? What is the bigger vision for your life? And then everything can fit into that. So we talked about that last week, and it's one of the things that I really help my clients with. I want to share a story really quickly about Jewel before I give you a practical tip today. So Jewel is somebody who came to me for a VIP day, and I shared this story once or twice, so you may have heard it, but it's really important because it was a big aha for her. It was a big breakthrough, and I see this happen with my clients over and over again. They come to me. I work mostly with entrepreneurs, coaches, aspiring entrepreneurs and coaches. So they come to me because if they've already started, they're not making the money they want. They're not working with the kind of clients. They're kind of getting burned out. They don't know where to focus. They're kind of spinning. Or they come to me because they're just getting started. In Jewel's case, she had already been going. She was making a little bit of money, but she wasn't where she wanted to be. And she was really frustrated. And she thought that her whole inspiration for her business was to really help people to eat a vegan lifestyle. And while that was something she was passionate about, it wasn't the real why underneath. It wasn't her bigger vision. It wasn't her motivating factor. And when we did the work to go deep underneath that and find out where it came from, and what it was really about, which was crazy, it was really about family connection. Right? It was really, and I know it sounds like the two don't go together, but there's a whole story and through line that connects what led her to wanting to live that lifestyle so that she could be healthy, her parents could be healthy, her kids could be healthy, and all because she had this vision of sitting around the table, 5 generations, eating, laughing, and just having a connected family that was active together and all of these things. When we got to that, it was like the floodgates opened. So I share that with you because it's important for you to actually ask yourself why you want to do something. When I quit smoking cigarettes, I was a smoker. I lived a very different lifestyle than I do now in my 20s. Now I'm in my 40s. When I quit smoking, it wasn't because people told me that I should quit. In fact, nobody was telling me that. I lived in a family of all smokers, and nobody who was like really prioritizing health. So it wasn't because I thought I should quit. The doctor told me, right? Like we can never do things. It just won't last if somebody else you're doing something for someone else, right? It's got to be intrinsic, right? So when I decided to quit, my bigger why was seeing myself in the future and wanting to be healthy and vibrant, like not have wrinkled skin, like things like that, right? Like it was my bigger why that helped me to actually quit and never smoke again, and like day by day stick to it, right? Whereas how come that's easy for some people to do, quote unquote easy? It's not necessarily easy, because to get to your goal, you've got to overcome the obstacles that most people don't because they give up, right? But why is it that so many people will attempt to quit smoking or drinking or whatever it is, and they don't, right? But others do. Because the truth is, if somebody else can do it, you can too. Well, there's the day-to-day obstacles and focus that someone who makes it to the end, right? There is no end, but somebody who achieves that is actually overcoming. they figured out a way to overcome that. And those over here who keep getting off track, starting over, not getting to their goal, they haven't figured out the way. And that's what we're talking about. So one of the main things is knowing why you're doing it. So whatever your goal is right now, and if you have paper and pen, and I suggest you come this week with paper and pen, because you know, these are really useful tips and tools that I'm giving you, and they're things that I use, things that I teach my clients, and that I see people exceed with or succeed with. So number one thing, if you have a goal, and if you have a goal, type it in the comments, like share, right? Because yesterday, the two things that I shared with you that have made the difference for me, and I used the example of like being at the Zone event this year and the year before, and being part of the success panel. Last year, I actually introduced Shanda, the host of the event. So I was there on the stage twice. And what I shared with you yesterday was that this isn't in something different for me. I was in a coaching community, you know, years ago when I owned a fitness center. And I was also on that success panel and made an example out of in that group of thousands, right? And I don't say that to brag. I'm saying that to show pattern, right? We learn how to do something. It becomes a habit. It becomes patterns. And then the way that we do one thing ends up being the way that we do all things, right? So I shared that yesterday, that what set me apart, or anyone apart from the majority of people in the same coaching communities, taking the same programs or classes, doing the same fitness program or diet, what sets us apart in this smaller percentage, right? High performers are in the small percent of population. What sets us apart from those who are not making it or hitting their goal is, number one, we take personal responsibility for our result. We don't make it the coach's responsibility or the program's responsibility or the trainer or the spouse or anything like that, right? So that's what I shared yesterday, is personal responsibility. And then number two, declaring it publicly, putting it out into the universe, right? Because whatever you keep inside doesn't have space to grow. It doesn't have space to be nurtured. You can't, whatever it is, especially as an entrepreneur, many of you here are entrepreneurs or aspiring to be. That's my dog. And that's a creative process in terms of like getting out into the world what you want. So you've got to get it out of you, right? So publicly declaring it puts the intention in the universe. It also solidifies it in your mind, because once you say it, like I said yesterday, you've got to keep your word. That comes with the territory of being a high performer. So I want you to declare it by, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay, type in the comments right now. What is a big goal that you have? I saw Emma yesterday, my assistant coach, came on and watched the replay. And she said, oh my God, I also want to go pro in the sport of bodybuilding, but I didn't say anything. I kept it inside because I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to look like I was copying Jessica, right? Like, there's reasons that we hold things inside and we never get them out of us. And typically, like, it has to do with other people. We can't make things about other people when it has to do with our goal and our vision. So yesterday you learned, you've got to be personally responsible for it. You've got to declare it publicly so that you're accountable, right? And then you've got to hold your word, right? So today, what I'm talking about is you've got to know why this is your goal. So write down in your journal, however you're managing this, and you can also put it in the comments. What's the goal and why do I want it? What's the real reason? Right? So a lot of times people will come to me and they say, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work from home because, you know, I want to make my own schedule, or I wanted this, or I wanted that. And like, that's not a big enough why. It's just not. Because guess what? Being an entrepreneur is not easy. I don't care what anybody tells you. You know, you got to be careful that you don't believe the hype and the highlights in social media. right? There is a certain type of person that can succeed at being an entrepreneur, and you've got to be a high performer. You've got to have these habits in place. You've got to think in the way that I'm talking to you. You've got to be self-motivated, and quite often in the beginning, you're working a lot of hours, right? It's not about that time freedom. Ultimately it can be, but your why has got to be bigger than that, right? So just to give you an example, like my why for my company, right? And it even was for my fitness company, right? Like I stand for personal responsibility. I know that by being responsible for the way that I think, the things that I do on a daily basis, I know that no matter what my past has been, no matter where I am now, I know that when I get hooked into my vision and I am personally responsible for getting there, then I know nothing can get in the way. And so that drives me to teach other people how to do that, right? My mission and my calling, my why, right, is really in this lifetime to teach you how to intentionally, how to on purpose manifest, right? On purpose create. The reason I say on purpose is because you're manifesting all the time, right? All you got to do is look around you and you'll see what you're attracting into your life. It all comes from the way you think, and then what you think becomes your beliefs, and then you start to do things that back that up. So my mission is to teach people how to shift that, right? How to do it on purpose so that you can create any change or transformation that you want. Like I said, regardless of past or present, right? I want to be a powerful catalyst for like radical change and transformation. And that can only happen through you being personally responsible. My why, the real why underneath that, even though that's the mission and the calling, I want you to see the difference. Even though that's the mission and the calling for me in this lifetime, my why underneath comes from a darker place. It comes from my perception and interpretation while growing up that the adults closest to me did not take personal responsibility for their actions and for what they put out into our family and into the world. And so that drove me to want to make this my mission. So whatever your goal is, get really clear as to why it's your goal, right? So you might even have a weight loss goal, right? But there's a real reason underneath that. There's a real reason underneath that. And your reason doesn't always come from some beautiful place. Inside of my Get Set method, I teach something called, one of the steps in the beginning is defining your disgust, right? So if you're watching this right now and you're like, you know what, Jessica, I haven't even set any goals. You're like, I don't even have any big visions right now. And like, I'm just kind of like, at a plateau. If that's you, do a little journaling work and ask yourself, what one thing in my life right now am I actually, when I think about it, I'm kind of disgusted by it, right? Like, and you have to get real with yourself. What in my life am I completely disgusted by? It's in the back of my mind that I want to change it, that I want to do something about it, but I haven't. Maybe like get real with yourself. Maybe like you're disgusted by your body. That was one of the things. It doesn't mean you don't love yourself, right? Like the thing is, you've got to be honest with yourself. That was one of the things that motivated me when I looked in the mirror and then looked at pictures I think I was like 26, 27. I was not only overweight, but just so puffy, bloated, bad skin, all because of the lifestyle that I was living. And so the disgust started by just looking, and then of course the way that I felt and the way that I knew that that was going to end up being if I didn't make a change in my life. The reason I stopped smoking is because I was disgusted by it. I got disgusted by the way that I smelled and all of those things. I got disgusted by the fact that I had to pick up a cigarette, or I told myself I had to pick up a cigarette, right? You might be disgusted by the fact that maybe secretly you drink too much, right? Maybe you're disgusted created the income in your life that you need to do that. So get clear about why it is that you have this goal. And if you don't have a goal right now, do the work. What are you disgusted by? And then take that disgust. In the law of attraction, Esther Hicks teaches, and the teachings of Abraham, teaches that we have contrast in our life, meaning the things that we don't like or want, to help us define and get clear on the things that we do want. So don't beat yourself up about that contrast, right? Don't wallow in it. It's just enough to see it, to identify it, to feel it, to be honest about it, and then to say, okay, where do I want to take this now? Okay, so just before we wrap up, I want to refresh. How do you stay focused on your goal until you achieve it? Number one, you decide that you're going to take personal responsibility for making it happen. I don't care who you hire, who you work with, what books you read, who your spouse is. Like, you cannot make the responsibility anyone but yours, right? And then two, declare it publicly so that you're accountable. Declare it publicly and keep your word, right? So once you declare it publicly, just know I'm going to keep my word. And you haven't heard me say anything yet about setting like a date. We don't even need to think about that yet, right? Because oftentimes you put the pressure on yourself to get something by a certain date, right? And then that freaks you out. So you start moving the date. And like, that's not the world that I work in. Just declare it. And by declaring it, know that it is there for you to be had. Because if it wasn't, you couldn't actually even think it up. Okay, so personal responsibility, declare it publicly. And then number three, what I'm talking about today is get really real about why you want that goal. This is, so many people set these New Year's resolutions and fail. It's because these resolutions don't really mean anything. They don't have a real why underneath that has real value, that is bigger than yourself. Remember, I shared my why for my company. My why is not for making money. It's not for like the time freedom and all of that. Those are some of the benefits, right? But my why is to move my mission out into the world and teach people how they can actually have a transformation in their life, in all areas of their life, like I have. And so I'm teaching them the methods by which I've done this, because I want to see other people have that experience. And then it becomes something that they pass on. And then you start changing the mindset DNA of your families, right? And that goes out into the communities and the universe as a whole. See how that is a way bigger why? That is a way bigger why. It doesn't mean that your why might not grow when you start for maybe a more superficial reason or a smaller reason. That's okay too. But if you stop having the result that you want, if you're at a plateau, or, if you're not inspired by it, like, that's where you get to stop, go inward and say, wait a minute, what's the real reason I want to do this? Okay, so I hope that supported you this morning. Let me know in the comments, and come back tomorrow with your journal and your pen, because I've got another really great tip, two more tips for you tomorrow on how you can stay focused until you achieve your goal. Thanks, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday. Bye.